Chris Meaney of FTN Network. Chris, I really wanted to have you on because of big news dropping today. David Kampf signs a big deal with no, I'm just joking. We're not going to start with David Kampf.
Wow, we're doing that, are we?
No, we're not. We did talk about it. I had to cut it off shortly. But listen, so much going on in the NHL. People predicted that there's going to be pretty busy offseason. It looks like it's going to be. The Devils and Timo Myers agreed to an 8-year deal worth $8.8 AAV per season. Your thoughts on the extension there?
I think it's pretty fair. You know, he's one of the best volume shooters in the NHL. He's a sniper. Goals are hard to come by. He's a proven goal scorer in the league. And I mean, the Devils were very aggressive getting him last year. Didn't really feel like a great fit, you know, but it's a learning curve for some of these players to go to new teams, you know, not just the logistics of them being on the ice and getting familiar with some of their teammates, but also like a family move, you know, from the West Coast to the East Coast. All those things come into factor. So I think it was a really good get for the Devils. They picked up Tyler Toffoli yesterday as well. This team is here. They're on the rise. They got a lot of young players. They play with a lot of pace. They were, you know, they checked a lot of boxes at 5-5 per 60 last season. I think they got a lot of couple of young blue liners like Luke Hughes, brother of Jack, who's going to be a full defenseman for them this season as well. So I think the signing is fair. You know, now they got to get Jesper Bratt under contract as well. But yeah, Timo Myers, in terms of, you know, real life, I'd say he's a top 10 scorer in the league for sure, and upside to be a top 5 guy.
Plus 1,200 to win the cup, Justin.
Yeah. Chris, I'm looking at their cap friendly right now, and Timo Myers is the highest paid forward at $8.8 million. You got Jack Hughes signed, Jesper Bratt signed, Nico Hischier signed. Their highest paid player is Dougie Hamilton, and they still have $10 million of cap space. Are the Devils now a budding potential dynasty going forward in the future?
Dynasty?
I'm calling it right now. I think so. I think they are.
Wow.
Holy
okay.
smokes.
Well, you got to win a couple playoff rounds and a Stanley Cup, I suppose. But I see where you're going. Like, they're on the rise. They're there. I think a lot of people over the past couple of years have felt like they would be there a little bit earlier. Like last year, there was a lot of rumblings. Oh, this is a Stanley Cup contender. And for me, it was like, prove it. You know what I mean? Like a lot of guys in their team had not had any playoff experience at all. Now they got a taste of it. They went into a 7-game series against the Rangers, took out the Rangers, and then got bounced pretty early by the Hurricanes. But they learned a thing or two along the way. They didn't really get any goaltending. But I think, yeah, you just brought up some of their players. They got Jack Hughes under contract at the time. A lot of people, myself included, didn't know if that would be a great contract, but clearly at $8 million for him, who's going to be a 100-point player in the league. You mentioned Bratt, you bring Timo Myers, you got, you know, they have a nice mix now of young players with a ton of skill, and then veteran players like Dougie Hamilton, Andre Palat's on the squad's got a couple Stanley Cups with the Lightning. I mentioned Tyler Toffoli, you know, 34 goals, 70 plus points from him last year. Not a fluke. Multi 30-goal scorer, won a Stanley Cup with the Kings. Everywhere he's gone, they've just won, right? Calgary went on a bit of a run a couple years ago. The Canadiens in that weird 2020 season went to the Stanley Cup Finals thanks to Tyler Toffoli as well. So, yeah, I'd say it's the start of something. You know, in the Metro, especially teams like Pittsburgh and Washington, we've seen for years you could call dynasties, taking a bit of a step back, and a team like New Jersey with the young blood, with a nice mix of veteran players. I'd say they could be on their way to something special, but definitely a playoff team. And the 13-1, 12-1 that you mentioned, Albert, I think is a really good bet, and it's probably the best odds you'll get from now until the Stanley Cup is raised.
I'm just worried about the goaltending a little bit, right? Like, do they trust Vanacek? Do they go with Schmid, right?
Get Connor Hellebuyck and watch the odds. And
Sharms, you buying into the Devils dynasty or what?
No.
Why?
Because in modern sports, you don't really get dynasties. It's so rare to get real dynasties, legitimate dynasties. 2 cups in 3 years, like Tampa. Is that a dynasty? Maybe a modern dynasty, but you know, I mean, like Chris said, they've got to win a playoff round or 2 first.
They will.
Right? You're jumping the gun like crazy right now. Like, my God, take a breath. From dynasties to your Habs, Chris.
Yeah.
You missed out on Dubois, it looks like, anyway. Big draft tonight, 5th overall pick. What's the noise around that? Any chance they might flip it, or if not, who do you think's falling at 5?
I love the question about flipping it. I think personally they should take Michkov if he is there. I think he's the 3rd best player in this draft after, of course, Connor Bedard, who will be taken 1st overall, and then Adam Fantilli, who will be taken 2nd overall by the Anaheim Ducks. You know, a couple years ago at the under 18, it was Michkov who outplayed Connor Bedard. And when the World Juniors was canceled, they had a couple games, I think, in Alberta and Red Deer, and it was canceled early. But Michkov was well on his way as well to being a star in that tournament. And he was the MVP a couple seasons ago, as I mentioned, in the under-18. I think he's the most skilled player. I don't think anybody really knows what to expect from him. When is he going to come over to the NHL? Some reports suggest the earliest is 2026. We've seen Kirill Kaprizov spend some time over the KHL and come back as well. I think the Canadiens need to take, that old cliche, best player available, and he is. They missed out on getting Bedard and getting Fintali, and you can get a guy like Michkov here in a team in Montreal that is clearly not ready to win right now. And there's no difference, in my opinion. If they take Ryan Leonard with pick 5 instead, he's going to spend a couple years over, playing university hockey. So there's a lot of players. Bedard's an outlier. Finteli's going to play in the NHL as well. Leo Carlson potentially is the 3rd overall pick. He may play in the NHL right away, but a lot of these players that are going to get drafted, you're not going to see him for a couple years. So I would like to see the Canadiens take him personally. I don't know how they feel about that pick. And I think if they don't take him, there's going to be teams calling. Like if he is available at 5, there's going to be teams calling to move up, whether it's the Washington Capitals who are, win now, and maybe they can convince him to come over. It's possible. Jaromir Jagr a couple years ago, long time ago, told teams that he wouldn't play for them. He fell to Pittsburgh. I don't know if Michkov falls to 8 or 9, that's exactly what he's doing. He's telling teams that he's unsure about coming over to play North America. And then, maybe he falls down to a team that kind of, suits his pedigree a little bit more, a competitive squad, so to speak. But my gut tells me that the Canadiens will take Michkov. He's plus 225 at DraftKings to be the 5th pick tonight, whether it's him or the Habs trade out of that spot, like you mentioned. I think he's going to go 5th overall.
I find Michkov so fascinating. You hear some of these, draft experts. Bob McKenzie said, in the modern history of the draft, there's never been an elite prospect that can go 1st or 2nd overall that's been less personally scouted by NHL GMs, head scouts. Craig Button said his comp is Jaromir Jagr. Like, if you're hearing this and you're any of these teams, don't you think, hey, maybe we should probably jump on this guy as soon as possible?
Absolutely. I'm in agreement with that. I think he should be the 3rd player off the board. I think that's what the Blue Jackets should do. And they've shown us, I guess, over the past couple of weeks that they want to be really aggressive. They're one of the teams inside the top 10 feel like they can turn it around pretty quickly because Werenski missed some time last year. Johnny Hockey wasn't fantastic in his first year, but, Patrick Laine missed time. But they're a team that can turn it around, and they've made a couple significant moves. But, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it is a little bit risky, but it's high risk, high reward. You're getting a player, like you mentioned, Bob McKenzie talks about him, other experts across the league that have been scouts for years and years. And, again, I'll go back to just 2 years ago. There was a conversation, Bedard and Michkov. Now, Bedard has overtaken that, and he's been great, and he should be the 1st overall pick. But there was a convo a couple years ago with a good, solid debate on how close these guys were. And I think, because you said it, not a lot of scouts seeing this guy play every day, but man, he is. If he falls to 7 or 8, somebody's got a massive steal.
Yeah, some odds here quickly. So for him to go 2nd, this is courtesy of FanDuel, plus 400. To go 3rd, plus 3,300. 4th, 500, and then you said 5th pick plus 220. So want to make a sprinkle on any of those? There you go.
I think the one pick on Michkov I might do the play is over under 5.5 on FanDuel. Unders plus 100. That's a good shout out if anyone wants to take that. But I want to talk about Pierre-Luc Dubois. Moves from Winnipeg to LA. Canadiens didn't get him. Then he signs an 8-year, $8.5 million extension. Chris, did the Kings overpay for Pierre-Luc Dubois, or do you think this was kind of fair market value for what they got from the centerman?
Yeah, I think they overpaid twice. I think they overpaid on the deal to get him. Velarde is a really good player, and they got rid of some depth. Like Alex Iafallo is a good depth player, a prospect there, and an early pick, which I do believe was the Canadiens pick that they sent to the Winnipeg Jets. And then they overpaid a little bit on the contract at 8.5. They paid him like a number 1 center, which he's not. He's a career 62, 63 points this past season. A really good player. He's a really good two-way player. LA is just all in. You have a window and you want to be aggressive all the time. Like for me personally, I love to see teams be aggressive and go for it. What may catch up to them is years later on down the road. You get into year 4 of the contract. It may not look that great. Maybe he's not producing. He hasn't been the most happiest player in his spots over the course of his career. He wanted out of Columbus. He wanted out of Winnipeg. I guess he wants to stay in LA because this is Cali weather, and he signed the extension there. They're super deep down the middle. LA has been one of my favorite teams to not only bet on, to, sprinkle, a Stanley Cup future on as well. They play a great brand of 5-on-5 hockey. They have two of the best two-way centers in the league, and Anze Kopitar and Philip Deneau. And now you got Pierre Luc-Dubois on your third line, probably going to play with Kevin Fiala. They're going to have Kempe with Kopitar. And then you're going to have that second line that's been one of the better 5-on-5 lines in the league, and Arvidsson, Deneau, and Trevor Moore there. So LA can come at you in waves, and they've ran into the Oilers in each of the first 2 rounds last year. It is tough to go up against McDavid and Draisaitl. Now they actually have an advantage on most teams in the NHL and in the Western Conference when you roll 3 lines. But I think they're that depth. Now they just lost depth, like winger depth that they've lost with that trade. A good deal for both squads, I think, as well. Winnipeg wanted ready now players. They didn't want to rebuild. They wanted to retool, and everybody knew that Pierre-Luc Dubois wanted out. So for the Canadiens fans out there, I don't think it's the end of the world given that contract and the fact that Montreal is nowhere close, with Pierre-Luc Dubois just kind of scratching the surface maybe of his prime. I don't think it's the end of the world that they didn't get him, but ultimately this Kings team is going to be very, very competitive and probably one of the deepest squads down the middle in the NHL.
So with Dubois and Meyer both signing 8 years for just shy of $9 million, is that good or bad news for the Leafs as they try and sign William Nylander, who is very much in that same conversation?
Yeah, he is. I think it's good news. For William Nylander has been on one of the better contracts in the NHL, sub-7 here over the past couple of years. And I know at the time, a lot of people, certainly in Leafs Nation, thought that it was a bit of an overpayment. But man, every time I watch William Nylander, he just makes things happen. Like, he's just not that player that goes into the corner and throws his body around. That's okay. There's not a lot of people that are like that, but he makes things happen. Every time he touches the puck, he finds a way to create for his teammates, or he scores goals. So I think at under 9, like, that's kind of the first domino, right? You mentioned Timo Myers. We'll see about Alex DeBrincat. He doesn't want to be in Ottawa. There's rumors that he can get traded to Detroit, and maybe he signs for under 9. And I think William Nylander, checks in just at under 9. I think that would be a fair price at 8.85. But, if I'm Nylander, I'm not giving the Leafs a discount. You already had one. You already had a discount. Matthews and Nylander and Marner all made double digits. I just came off a 40-goal campaign. I want that money too. So it remains to be seen. I didn't really love Trey Living's first signing today in Kemp. If you want to pay a 4th liner, you got to get him under 2.5, but we'll see what happens with Toronto.
Thank you. Somebody agrees with me. I will say, listen, Nylander has sat out before until he gets what he wants. So I wouldn't be surprised if that actually happens again. Chris, you are the best. Thanks for jumping on here, buddy.
I appreciate it. Have a good one, guys.
All right, thank you. It's Chris Meaney of the FTN Network.
What are you laughing?
I started laughing when he said when we started talking about the hits, because you're looking up Nylander hits before we come on the air. And you're like, how does this guy only hit 15 guys? Was it 15?
Yeah,
15 hits on the season.
18. Yeah, 18 it was 82.
18 hits in 82 games.
I think I'd still rather have.
But then we looked at Marner's hits.
Yeah,
was it 50 something? Yeah,
there's a hit right there.
There you go.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
What's the hit stat? I don't know.
I'd rather have kind of a Nylander soft than a Marner soft. I think.
What does that mean?
Nylander moves his legs more. He's low center of gravity. He's stronger. I think Mitch just kind of bounces off players. I don't see Nylander bouncing off players.
We need to get you and Mitch Marner in a room to
have
a conversation.
I don't dislike Mitch Marner.
One-on-one
I just think he represents what's been the issue the last few years. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so you trade him if you're Brad Treliving?
Yes,
you would.
Yeah,
sign Nylander, trade Mitch.